Today's conversation, The Witcher, and I think, is that legit?
It just falls.
I'm like, no, and it just breaks. All right, so the show for today, I'm worried about this camera, man.
It's a little off kilter.
It's so off kilter. Why don't you just move over? This will be part of
How will
the,
that be better?
I don't know, it's part of the dynamic.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, this is good actually. Here we go.
I think that's pretty good.
Let's start.
All right, so a few years ago, Jimmy introduced me to The Witcher 3, actually. Game of the year, right? And he was telling me, look, you gotta watch this game because it's got one of the best storylines.
It's got the best storyline, best graphics.
Best graphics.
Not just for the size of the free roam, because it's free roam the game itself. Usually with Bethesda and stuff like that, like the size of the game makes the graphics have to take a toll, like it doesn't look as good.
Right.
And the thing with Witcher is that it somehow ended up being the best looking, best physics, most immersive, while also being the largest and best storytelling game that has ever existed. Probably, I think to this day, as far as free roam goes.
Interesting.
It
And this basically gave it that push to make a show, right?
Yeah.
Was that the fan? Was that the?
Well, because it came from books before it.
Okay.
So it was the mixture of the books, the fanfare from the books that already existed, and the games which aren't from the books. The Witcher 1 to 3 is completely made offhand.
Okay, I thought that was made up
From love of the books, but
Gotcha.
it's been considered the games have been considered the best fan fiction.
Which brings me to my next question. Netflix series, is this based off the game?
It's based off the books.
What is based off the books? Interesting. So if you know the books, you know the story.
But there's so much aesthetic. There's aesthetic and feel that's fan service, blatant fan service for fans of the games only.
Right.
Mixed with the books. It's just.
Well, like the fighting, I feel like that's sort of, it's probably pulled from.
The show
Right.
itself, if I could describe it, the best is a beautiful dance in between the fan service of fans of the books and the games.
Okay, cool.
It's a nod to both.
That's awesome. And on that note,
Perfectly done.
one of the biggest fans of the series of the books and of the game
Is Geralt, Henry Cavill.
Heavy Girl. So basically, what's the story behind him in getting that role?
He learned that they were going to make a show out of it before there was any production even being made. They didn't even know if it was greenlit yet. And he learned that there was buzz, and he learned from it on Twitter, actually. And he played the games to death, he said. Like verbatim, that's what he said. He played Witcher 3,
I believe that. I just saw an interview. He played it 2 times through, and that is like, that game takes hours and hours.
It's in total 200 plus hours
Yeah.
to do everything.
Right.
The story itself is 60 hours long.
Jeez.
Novel's worth of dialogue, because it's dialogue options and stuff like that.
Right.
The most immersive, most story-driven RPG ever made.
Jeez. Wow. I'm thinking Mass Effect, but
Imagine Mass Effect with a map with several different continents
Okay.
of maps, each one slightly larger than the size of Skyrim's entire map.
Jesus. Okay. So this is what we're playing with to make this show.
Yeah.
All this material.
Just a stratosphere plethora of storytelling. Basically, when they made this show, they had nothing but material to work with.
And they apparently, so we'll get into the show in just a sec, but 8, what was it? 8, they believe they have 8 seasons worth of material, at least? Okay.
Because they couldn't make it a movie, they said it was impossible. They had to make it a show.
There's too much material.
Because there's too much ground to cover. There's too many characters. The first season 1 through 8, episodes 1 through 8, were them, even though it doesn't feel that way, it's them sort of roller coastering, like to make every character that matters, have them all integrate themselves into the story, and because it is a rushed timeline to make sure everyone has their spotlight. So you because the first season was made to get everyone acclimated to everyone that matters.
Well,
but it doesn't feel that way. It was so perfectly, beautifully done.
Well, so some people in our family were complaining that the first episode was boring, and
it can be boring if you don't know everything already.
Gotcha.
If for instance, like,
well, sometimes if you don't have the patience to watch past the first episode,
yeah. But fan know-how matters a lot.
What drove me to watch it was actually knowing that Henry was so into the role. That's why I was interested in watching it.
And it's one of those things, kind of like Lord of the Rings almost, the casting of Lord of the Rings, like how you look at that and you're like, oh, this was written in the stars. Every person fits their role perfectly. This is a kind of one of those things where, like, Henry Cavill, not just because of his excitement and hunger to play it, because of being a fan, for me, when I'm watching it, when you watch Henry Cavill as Superman, you're like, that's Henry Cavill playing Superman. With this, immediately, at no point did it be like, this is Henry Cavill. Immediately when I watched it, and this is a feat because Henry Cavill has the face and is a person where he is fighting against that, because he is such a distinct face and person, where he is such.
He's a popular actor.
Where he easily could be that actor where when he takes a role, you can be like, oh, it's Henry Cavill.
It's too Hollywood.
Because because he's look at his face, look at him, like this is like a distinctly unique looking person.
Right.
So the fact, like, when I watched it and he's playing Geralt, he's Geralt.
That's what I got too.
And a lot of it, and a lot of that, it can easily be put into the fact that he is that into the role and into the character, because he completely immerses himself, and to the point where when you watch it, you're like, this is the character.
That's one of the things I call it micro acting, but it's acting when you don't necessarily have to act. It's like when you're in the back and your facial features, like, you're still immersed in that role.
And also the voice.
Right.
The voice. So in the games, the voice of Geralt, which is done by a very good voice actor, it's Americanized, so it's an American voice, and it's completely, it's so good. But he said, so in the books he mixed it. In the books, it describes Geralt as having sort of a Yorkshire accent. So Henry Cavill said he basically just decided to mix the two of having the feel and monotone and graveliness of the character of the voice actor from the games with his natural British accent.
Yeah, cool.
And because of that, and here's the thing though, the Geralt voice, the monotone voice, which he does, it could so easily be hokey and
overdone
and
right.
B-movie quality.
Right.
Where it's like, when he says, and like so many different points, but like, when in a point where Yennefer is like, I thought you had fangs or horns or something. I've heard of witchers, and he's like, I had them filed down. Well, that could be so hokey.
Right.
But when he does it, and you look at him, it's like, this is a open and shut, compact fucking character I'm seeing right now. There is nothing I am questioning to who this person is saying this right
I gotta tell you, there's something about
this
him.
is a real,
Yeah.
fleshed out character.
Henry's, the way he goes about it, you can tell he's, Geralt, he's got layers, despite being this brutish sort of character. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's
well, he took it into account. It's
right.
not just that. Because, again, when we watch Witcher, it's not Henry Cavill being like, oh, and I studied the character or something like that. Well, what we're watching is really a beautiful fucking thing. Because as a nerd, because of the games and the movie and the games and the books, so what we're getting to see, and I think this is the reason it's so good, with him, even though he knocks it out of the park.
It's a fan. It's a fan.
It's because we're getting to see a diehard fan
Right.
who's just in the same boat as the rest of us,
Right.
if not more so, getting to live out a fantasy of playing
That's
that
what he
character.
said. It's literally what he said. Yeah.
So he said playing Geralt was like getting to play the game again as a skin that's him.
He said like this is ideal. This is like the ideal job that he would. You know.
So what you're seeing is a nerd,
Yep.
complete nerd fan getting to live out a dream of his.
get paid for this dream.
So
literally.
and
yeah.
it's also Henry Cavill. So you're seeing just a nerded out Henry Cavill giving every part of his acting ability
Okay.
to a character that he's to a character that I would say he wants to be the most that he's ever been in his acting career. Probably
Yeah.
more than Superman. Like he said like
He was
again,
cool with Superman, but you know.
Again, he said he had his agent calling day after day to make sure that he got his name put into the hat to play Geralt because he was that into it. And you know how awesome that is as a fan?
Yeah.
You know how awesome that is?
Well, it was
as
like
a nerd?
Deadpool. It was like Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
He really fought for.
It's just written in the stars, dude.
Right.
Like, because when you watch the series, it's like this. I'm beside myself. Not even from his acting, everything. The show, you could, in every scene, in every actor that was picked, you see that it was made with love and care to the people that, not just the people that are fans of the books and the show, but you see how everyone involved wanted to make a show that truly lived up to the beauty and amazingness of the story and the games.
Right.
It's a love poem to the fans and people who just want a really good story.
And I have a question. How about to somebody who's never experienced?
Well, I mean, I had my dad watch it, and my mom.
And what were both
and they're both. It's their new addiction.
Yes. Okay.
Because they never obviously played the games and read the books. It's the besides the fanfare, which is so there. It's about making this. It's about showing through. It's about what I think is besides that. It's about broadening showing to the masses that haven't experienced the story in any way before, being able to show them cold. Like right out the gate, hey, this is a fucking consistently amazing story of brutal, hard-hitting fantasy. Not fantasy because the thing is with Witcher, it's hardcore. It's not like, so for instance, like one of the things is like it's Polish, it's Slavic mythology.
Okay.
That it has a lot to do with. Like actual Slavic mythology with monsters and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's one of those things where it's like there's elves, dwarves, and it's not like other ones where it's like, someone gets a curse on them and they're like, oh, I'm a werewolf.
Right.
This has to do with hard, and the games, Witcher 3 actually had a thing where it was a thing where it touched on really taboo concepts. The first game of any that ever before to tap into these kind of really taboo shit, where, for instance, in the Witcher 3, there was a mission where it's called the Red Baron, and it's a whole timeline, a whole plot line that you deal with. But one of the missions is he had a wife, they had a child, she had a miscarriage, and she gives birth to the miscarriage, and he has it buried. And in this world, when you bury a child without a name, they never gave it a name, it gets a curse put on it, where it gets turned into a thing called a botchling, where it turns into this toad-like abomination-looking thing with the umbilical cord still attached to itself, and it crawls out of its own grave, and feasts on the blood of pregnant women.
Oh my God.
So there's a point where the Baron is a shell of himself. You hate him at first. You're kind of like, this guy's an asshole, But again, character development is a huge thing, and then you start to really pine for this guy. And so there's a mission where you go with him to the burial site, where if you there's a ceremony you can do where it'll make the botchling turn into a ghost that is a guardian of the family.
Wow, that is cool.
So if you fuck up the mission, you have to kill the botchling, or it'll become that.
Right.
And depending on if you screw up the mission and you can't do what you gotta do. There's like timing and stuff like that. But there's a moment where you go down to the to the grave, and this is a game, and that's what I'm saying. Like this is a point where even me as an avid gamer realized this is something fucking new. This is something different. This is something really hard hitting, because you go down there and the grave is shallow. It's dug up. It crawled out already, and he's looking down like, where is it? And then as you're looking at it, Geralt and the Red Baron, it's a cut of an umbilical cord dragging, and then like this and that, and then like Geralt looks behind the Red Baron, he does this. And he taps on the Red Baron's shoulder or something like that. And the Red Baron looks back and he's in horror. And you see, and it's what looks like it's a baby crawling, but it looks like a toad, like deformed, and an umbilical cord attached to it dragging behind. It's like caught in its neck, and this and that. It's an abomination. And then the Red Baron is stumbling back, going like, "That's not my daughter. That's not my baby. That's not my child." And then you have to pick it up and carry it, and then the end of the mission is, if you do save the botchling, it's a scene where the Red Baron has to hold this thing and do this incantation where I announce thee my child, and it has to give it a name.
I announce thee my child.
Yeah, and he's crying because he's saying this to an abomination,
right.
A monster, but that's formed from the sin that he did of bearing his aborted child without a name, or the miscarriage. Think about that. That's in a game.
Yeah,
it's in a video game.
That is intense, man.
Besides all the rest, it was a moment where I was playing a video game, and I saw an aborted baby with an umbilical cord still attached to it, crawling out of its own grave in a cutscene, and the father looking in absolute horror, saying, "That's not my child," with tears in his eyes. That's a game, okay? So, and that's not any game. That's The Witcher, and The Witcher and the reason I'm such an avid nerd about it is because The Witcher, the series, it's not just one mission like that.
No.
Almost every side mission, like Elder Scrolls, there's stuff like that. There's side missions where it's this is a fucking side mission. With
Right.
Witcher, the side missions, which start a certain way, there's a werewolf that's killing people. You already know once you start to play, this is about to turn into a fucking chronicle of love triangle,
right,
or something. There's one where I won't go on about this, but
no,
there's
fine.
one where someone's talking about a monster in the woods, right? And you go into the woods and you're studying the ground, and there's a man's footprints, and then you're studying the man's footprints. He went this way or that way, and then you look and there's a bunch of tattered clothes in front. You say, okay, tattered clothes, broken, shredded clothes, and then you look, okay, the tracks are repeating. Now there are wolf's tracks. It's on all fours now. So as you're playing and you're studying the tracks, you're literally studying after the fact. It's having you study the transformation of a werewolf.
Oh, that is cool.
It's a man's tracks. You see the tattered clothes. The tracks are different now. They're on all fours. It's a wolf now. And you feel it. I got chills just thinking about it. And then it's not just that though. Then you realize that then you go to this cabin, and it turns out that the cabin, the monster, the werewolf, you find a journal where he's written all this stuff about how he's been hiding in this cabin for every night during a full moon to hide himself from his wife. And then you learn that there's a friend of the wife's, a family friend, who was in love with the guy who's the werewolf, and she knows he was a werewolf. So, and the person that he killed was his wife, and the girl that was in love with him sent his wife out there to see what he was, so that she would be disgusted and she could have him.
Oh wow.
And then you're given with an option once you find him, where she comes down, and out of nowhere, and you're given an option to either kill him, or to kill him or let him kill her.
Interesting.
Out of anger, because he's angry at her, because he wants to kill her because once he realizes she's the one that sent his wife down to see him, and she's the reason that he was able to kill his own wife. Like, it's that, like. And that's every mission.
You know what this reminds me of? So
nothing ever, and like any kind of simple mission like that.
Right.
Like, oh, there's a devil stealing grain.
Yep.
Or a child went missing. Once you play through enough, you're like, this is about to be another epic fucking storyline. I don't even have a clue where it's gonna go.
Right.
That's 200 hours, 200 plus hours of that shit, and none of it is stale. None of it. It is from hour 0 to 200, with the main storyline included of masterful, A+ professionalist storytelling and graphics. It's the perfect fucking game. It is. And it was made not from the books. It was purely cold after the fact. Without any help from the books.
Dude, that is amazing. And I gotta say, it kind of reminds me, I'm gonna reference it for a second, but you like Wolf Among Us, that game. It's a game that kind of takes fantasy and it places it in a universe kind of like this one. Like, what would happen in real life if we did have these fantasy-related problems? What would really happen? You know, it's not colored by fantasy. It's fantasy colored by reality.
That's The Witcher.
That's Witcher. Oh, dope.
The Witcher. The reason that it gives it such a levity is because, you know what I consider it
They
to be kind of like? Elder Scrolls meets Last of Us.
Someone compared it to Game of Thrones, and that's what Henry said he gets compared, because that kind of reality mixed with the fantasy.
More so even, because
more so Game of Thrones. More so even.
I would say more heavy hitting than Game of Thrones.
Interesting.
Because there are aspects of Witcher that even Game of Thrones hasn't touched.
Interesting. And we didn't read the books.
Like Game of Thrones.
Well, we didn't read the books. The books go to pretty heavy places.
But Game of Thrones enters, you know, rape and stuff like that, you know, real world shit.
Right.
But not. You know what it does? It mixes the unbelievable.
What is going on with that?
It's a dog. It mixes the unbelievable with a grotesqueness of real world shit that I don't think Game of Thrones even touched on, because that was hard hitting, but Game of Thrones still never touched on the idea of a curse being put on a dead pregnant woman that made the dead fetus rejuvenate and burst out of the woman in the sarcophagus, burst out of the woman and feed on the blood of pregnant women with basically a overgrown abortion.
Right.
I never saw that in Game of Thrones.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, of course, if Witcher decides to go there, they're probably going to get.
They already have.
A lot of. I'm just saying, like, you know, in terms of where they could potentially go, you know, and they did go there. Obviously, I don't want to give too much of the show away. But
well, also another thing with Witcher is the what's the word? The preciseness of the different kind of storylines. I'm just talking like there's so many generalized like versions in fantasy of like a hero coming to fruition or a beauty that did, like for instance Yennefer, again spoilers, Yennefer being a hunchback.
Yeah.
okay, like what I'm talking about is that, like that kind of specific storytelling where it's like, think about the last time, like there's certain storylines, like say like, you know, where like, it's like, you know, an elven princess falling in love with a dwarf prince, that kind of shit.
Right.
But it's with Witcher where, and in the games, it never lets you be able to map anything out story wise. It never gave you the chance.
Right.
Where like, and again, like where Yennefer, she starts out as a hunchback witch, right?
Yeah.
And then think where it goes. Like how you would have never been able to map out. She portals, and then because of that, she's known to witches, and she to the main witch that makes her go into this. I'm gonna butcher, you know, the wording of it, but you know, like to the takes her to this, you know, sorceress Hogwarts basically,
Right.
And then through an incantation, through the ascension of what they go through, she's gone through she's gone through a thing, a procedure that makes them beautiful and takes away their imperfections.
Right.
But again, not just think about anything else, any other kind of story like series you would see where it's like, oh, you're beautiful now. Oh, look, she's different. With Witcher, and this is what's so amazing about Witcher is that it's visceral and it's hard hitting in every aspect. Where when he says the sorcerer that makes them all beautiful and takes away their imperfections before they ascend, he says, one thing you should know: in order to be reborn, you will no longer bear. I mean, they can't bear children. So you say, okay, the incantation takes away their ability to have children. No, with Witcher, it's always more than that.
Right.
With Witcher, it means he literally goes in and cuts out her ovaries because he needs them to burn and crunch up and with think about this, with her burnt ovaries that he cut out of her fucking vagina, her insides, he then makes a paste to paint on the imperfections of her body, her spine, her jaw. And while he's saying the incantations, it makes the unbelievable with that kind of horrific kind of shit. It makes the completely unbelievable kind of believable to the viewer in a weird way.
That brutality. Yeah.
What you need is and that's where it kind of becomes a thing where it's like with The Witcher, there's constant brutality, but the brutality isn't gratuitous. The brutality is there to ground it, to ground the unbelievable into being believable to the viewer.
That's what I'm getting. That's different about this show.
I just talked a bunch, but
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
My biggest worry is it's on the last sliver of it, so I just want to make sure we get all of this. But Jimmy, you pretty much pinpointed why it is different, and it's that groundedness. You know, that makes more sense to me now. I kind of was discovering that through just listening to you talk. But guys, we'd like to stay longer, but the battery's on low, so I just want to make sure we keep this. You know, if it went out, I'd be like, oh God, he was so passionate during it. But peace, guys. Hey, check out the show if you haven't.
Mike barely talks. Sorry, but
no. This is that's what. No.
Yeah.
This is why I like having people like you. I want. It's great for me because I get to be a fan and pay attention. I love this. So anyway, guys, peace. Check out The Witcher. It's a dope show. Check out the game if you haven't.
It's on Netflix.
Yeah, if you're a gamer. I'm not a gamer, but
if you're a gamer or a fan of the books or neither, you owe it to yourself to watch this show.
check it out. It's a good stuff.
Yeah.
Peace.
Peace out.